Good evening, friends. Myself, Dr. Nidhi Darbari, on My Education Treasure. In my previous video on illustration with example skills of micro teaching, I had discussed about the meaning and types of illustration with example. Today, in my present video, I am going to tell you about the advantages and disadvantages of using illustration with example skills. Thus, the examples can be defined as the observation or situation of occurrence of a concept, and the skill of illustrating with examples can be defined as the selection and presentation of the examples relevant to the concept to be taught to the students so as to make it easier for them to understand it. Advantages. The method of teaching has following advantages. Illustration and examples help to overcome the difficulties faced by the student in understanding the subject. Thus, the ideas are clarified and he is enabled to understand something which has eluded his comprehension. Illustrations help in the explanation and elaboration of abstracts and many scientific principles because verbal explanation becomes more concrete so that the complex subject is somewhat simplified. Illustrations tend to increase the student's interest in the subject and to enhance his curiosity to know more about it. In the absence of interesting illustration, the teaching becomes monotonous. Illustrations are not only helpful in teaching and understanding but also in memorizing or retaining the subject. It helps to recall because concrete facts are easier to memorize and recognize than abstract ideas. The presence of numerous illustrations during a lesson sharpens the student's observation. Besides, the teaching of sciences is done through experiment which serves as illustration in the presence of the students in order to help them to understand the subject. If many illustrations are provided, they provide fine mental exercise and practice to the students in the subject concerned because increased interest and attention lead to greater observation and better retention and recall. They help to provide clarity and vividness to the subject matter. They help to simplify explanation and make the instruction concrete. Illustrations create curiosity and interest among the students. Illustrations train the senses to greater acuteness of perception and help to strengthen the retaining and reconstructing power of the students. They are valuable in developing the power of observation of the students and in the formation of good learning habits. They make learning burden-free. Disadvantages. The real importance of the illustration lies in the fact that they make the abstract ideas concrete and thus make the task of teaching learning quite interesting and meaningful. They are the best attention-catching device and motivating agents. But illustration as a teaching strategy suffers from the following disadvantages. Overloading of the lesson with the use of illustration may provide negative results to the process of teaching and learning. It may halt the feeling of curiosity and creativity spark generated by illustration and make the student disinterested and bored and waste their valuable time with little gains. The use of illustration needs proper care and training on the part of the teachers. They need to be judiciously selected and wisely used for achieving the desired learning outcome. A teacher must have full understanding and skill related to its use. Illustration as a means and not an end. Illustrations are good servants but bad masters. Their misuse or overuse is likely to spoil the lesson. They should not be regarded merely as a means of making a lesson interesting. Their educative value should be the prime factors of their use. It is a wrong belief that a lesson cannot be made effective without concrete illustration. The students must be trained to think in abstract terms. The teacher should keep in mind the following points in the use of illustration. Illustration should be very exact and accurate. Defective illustrations are likely to distort learning. Every teacher will try to have his own collection of illustrative material from different sources, for example, journals, magazines, pictures, postcards, etc. In the end, it may be stressed that a wise selection, timely presentation, and intelligent use of illustrative material will be a very valuable asset of every teacher. Illustration should be interesting and appeal to the students. Too many illustrations provide hindrance in the achievement of teaching objectives and distract the attention of the student from the real subject matter. A teacher should rationally use and maintain proper balance in the use of illustration. Insufficient and improper illustration results in the lack of interest and attention on the part of the students. According to the nature and content, the teacher must carefully think and locate the places beforehand where to use verbal illustration and where to use concrete illustration for illustrating the presented content. Illustrations should be so simple that they can be easily comprehended by the student and should need little comments and explanation. Illustrations like diagrams and tables can be worked out in the presence of the student in the classroom itself while teaching. Attractive, bright, colored, simple illustration appeal to the student's interest. There should be variety and novelty in the use of illustration. Constant use of the same type of illustration make the presentation dull, boring, and monotonous. Use of illustration in the lesson should be properly planned by the teacher. Illustration should not be used in such a way as the students remember only the illustration and not the content. Illustration should be relevant to the topic, content taught, occasion, need, interest, and abilities of the student. They should be used at the proper time when they are most needed. Illustration, whether verbal or concrete, should never be used merely for recreation. The main purpose is to illustrate, elucidate, and make the presented material simple and understandable. Illustration should be well understood and accepted by the students on the basis of their experiences. A teacher should provide adequate pre-experience and training to his students for deriving advantages from the illustration. For deriving better results from the illustration, a follow-up in the form of putting relevant questions to the students after the use of illustration should always be done by the teacher. If you found the video to be informative and interesting, I request you all to please give a like to my video to motivate me, share it with others, and subscribe it so that whenever I upload a new video, you will get a notification. A teacher must acquire the knowledge and skill of using illustration. They should be accurate and true in depicting and illustrating the content. While using verbal illustration, the teacher must have command over the language, communication skill, and sufficient memory in the right way at the right time. They should be based on the common experience of the teacher and have a dramatizing effect. For example, use of gestures, suitable voice with proper pitch, movement, etc. Similarly, he must take proper training in the selection, preparation, use, safety, and maintenance of the non-verbal material. Non-verbal illustration should be properly displayed for a reasonable period before the student so that the entire class is able to see them clearly and easily. A chart, picture, or a map should be properly hung. A three-dimensional illustration, for instance, a real object, specimen, or a model, should be placed at the right place. Thank you very much for patiently watching the video, and don't forget to subscribe.